Welcome to episode 3 of Unsolicited Inspiration. Today I'm going to talk about something that is most likely going to upset some people, and I just need you to know that that's not where I'm coming from. I love every human, I love every Jew. I understand there's a million different ways to go about everything in life, be it religion or spirituality or anything, but this is something that has been on my mind for a little bit of time and it's becoming a little bit more prevalent, and I want to address it. This is not just opinion. All of this, everything I try to say, is based on Torah, is based on practice. So just bear with me. There is a very big difference between religion and spirituality. And I've been noticing more and more and more that people are confusing the two, that they're trying to be spiritual in an effort to be religious, be observant, or, connect to God. But what I'm finding is that a lot of those people are really using that to just bypass their actual obligations as a Jew. And this is something that I want to make very clear has to be addressed, because I think a lot of people are really missing the point. Now, nothing I say here means that I think I'm amazing or that I'm great or that I'm better than you. These are just things that I'm noticing that are happening in Judaism that I think need to be addressed. So here goes. If I showed you a bird, a dead bird on the ground, and it had no wings, you would look at it and say, this is a dead bird. I wonder what happened to its wings. But it's a bird. It's very clear. It has its beak and its feathers and whatever else a bird has on it. I don't know. But if you just were walking down the street and you saw a set of wings, either a right wing, a left wing, or both, with no bird body, would you be like, oh, there's a dead bird? Or would you be like, there are some bird wings. I wonder what happened to the bird. Now, forget that a bird without wings can't fly. It's still a bird. But if you just see wings with no bird, then that's not a bird. That's just bird wings. Here's where I'm getting at. There is a concept in Judaism called kavanna, or intention. This is something we want to have, that Judaism stresses about having proper intentions when you pray, proper intentions when you learn, proper intentions when you do a mitzvah. And there are certain mitzvahs, certain prayers, where if you say them without intention, without proper intention, you may as well not have said them, right? Like, for example, saying Shema, you have to have proper intent with what you're saying, that you're accepting Hashem's, God's oneness, that there's only one God and that He is your God and He's the God that runs nature and the God above nature. But there are other mitzvahs and things you can do where it's still a mitzvah to do, whether you have kavanna or intention, regardless. And that is applicable to most mitzvahs. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I've seen a lot of people, and I get why this happens, right? I mean, a lot of people grow up religious, they grow up observant, where they do a whole lot of mitzvahs, okay? And to their credit, to their parents' credit, this is how they were raised, but a lot of it becomes habitual. And there's no kavanna, there's no intention anymore after years and years and years of doing something. And I'm not talking about like the small dips that people have, that everyone has all the time, where some people are more inspired or less inspired. I'm just talking about people who have done this out of habit for so many years, and they're still doing lots of mitzvahs. They're still praying, they're still learning, they're still, doing what they're supposed to be, but there's just no feeling there. And I've noticed that a lot of people, because it's obviously not the ideal way to serve God or to feel good about what you do, have been trending lately towards going the other way. And when I say the other way, I don't mean negating Judaism altogether or saying that it's not real or not believing in God. I'm saying that because people are looking for connection, they're looking for spirituality, they're very busy focused on how to get that feeling, how to get that spirituality that makes them feel connected to what it is they're doing. Now, that's great. There's no problems with any of that. The main issue that I have and why I'm bringing this up is because I've noticed that when people end up doing that, they end up losing sight of the fact that a bird is not a bird with just wings. What do I mean by that? The Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi explains in Tanya. If you don't know what Tanya is, please look it up. He basically explains that when you pray, when you do a mitzvah, when you learn Torah, your actions are elevated to a spiritual place, okay? There's 4 spiritual worlds that God used to create this whole order of creation in order to create this world and us and everything in it. And when you pray or when you do something, even if you have no intent or no kavanna, it rises up to at least the lowest world. And from there, depending on whether you have kavanna or not, meaning do you have fear or awe of God? Do you have love of God? Do you have proper intent when you're doing these things? Your intent will dictate how high up your prayers get elevated, how high up the result of your Torah and mitzvahs will actually rise up to in the world above. And we're going to do a whole nother thing at some point explaining how this mechanism works and how the stuff that we do down here affects the worlds above, and in turn is a cycle just like rain, where the water drains up from the lakes and the rivers and the ocean, and then eventually rains back down on us. We'll get into that at a different time. However, for the purposes of this discussion, what I want to make clear is that your intent or your fear and awe or intentions when you do these mitzvahs or when you pray acts like wings, with fear and awe being the left wing, love of God being the right wing. And a bird with only one wing can't fly. So you need both. You need 2 working wings in order to take your mitzvahs, your prayers up to a place where they actually affect some positive change in the heavens above and are then able to affect positive change down here. So that is the point of all of these mitzvahs. And that's the entire point of prayer. The entire point of prayer is to draw down, by elevating what we do here, drawing down the blessings that we need in this world, which is why the main part of prayer is us asking for things. So clearly you have to have intent, you have to have proper kavanna, you have to have the wings of the love of God, the awe of God, in order to elevate those. Because like we said, a bird with no wings can't fly. The main point I'm making here, though, is that if you just have wings, you don't have a bird. There's nothing to fly up. And what I've seen lately is that there's a lot of misdirected spirituality and misdirected effort on behalf of, trying to reach this place where we have some, spiritual benefit, right? Everyone here, anyone I'm talking about that, is on this journey to spirituality without being tied to actual tangible action, mitzvahs or prayer, they're all coming from a good place. This is not a knock on anyone for going that route. But we live in a world where people are confusing breathwork exercises, ayahuasca retreats, yoga, all sorts of other things which can be good. There's nothing wrong with any of them. There's not a therapy that I say that, unless it's avodah zarah or idol worship, that it's somehow you're doing something that is going to hurt your Judaism. I'm not knocking anyone's demons. I'm not knocking anyone's methodology of taking care of themselves, their mental health, their emotional health. Everyone comes from a different place. I'm not judging anyone for anything. And again, I'm not looking at myself as the relative metric of proper kavanna or proper action. I'm just talking overall. A lot of these people are substituting those things that make them feel good, that make them feel connected, but then are forgetting the fact that the whole basis for all of this is that if you want your bird to fly, it has to be a bird. You can't just have wings, meaning you can't have kavanna with no action, or else what is the purpose of the kavanna? The wings that you see on a dead bird that are on the floor, they can't fly anywhere. They're not connected to anything. So everything that you do in your life as a Jew has to require or involve all of those things: two working wings and the bird, meaning the action of what it is that you're doing, and that has to be based on Torah, because Hashem, God, gave us a set of rules, and then it has to have wings in order to actually elevate those to where they belong. Now, in my opinion, Nike's slogan of "just do it" applies to Torah and mitzvahs, because if you just do the actions and you don't even know why, and this is why Chabad puts tefillin on strangers who don't even know what they're doing, right? The action itself is the bird, and that creates value, okay? Now, that mitzvah, that prayer, that Torah study might not get elevated to the higher worlds, but as far as creating connection between Jews and Hashem, as far as affecting this physical world and the spiritual worlds, having that action is essential. Now, what ends up happening to those actions, just so you know spiritually, is that when mitzvahs are done and are not done with proper intent, they kind of get stored in limbo. And they wait there until the time when someone does them with proper intent, and then those mitzvahs actually get elevated to where they belong. So they're almost just being stored until the Jew is ready to go about this the right way, which means they're not wasted potential. And as far as Torah and mitzvahs goes, and this is just a time thing with anything in life, opportunity is something that when it's gone forever. If you transgress, if you break Shabbos, if you eat non-kosher, no judgment, I'm just giving an example here. Every time you do you perform a negative commandment, or you transgress a commandment, something you're not supposed to do that you do, you create a disconnection from Hashem. So imagine you had, a bunch of bungee cords connecting you to God. One of those cords would get severed. Now, the thing with rope is that it can be tied back together, and it can be tied back stronger after there's been a disconnect. Anyone who's knotted something that's ripped has had to make a stronger connection point than the first time. So doesn't mean you're supposed to do averas or you're supposed to sin, but the reality is that you can connect those points again, right? You disconnected from God, God forbid, you are able to reconnect via tshuva. But missed opportunity, because we live in a linear world where once you miss a chance, you can never go back in time. That means that if you have spirituality, if you have proper intent, but you don't have action tied to it, then you can't go back and recreate the action just because you had kavanna. You can always do the action and then later apply retroactively the kavanna, and that's a whole nother thing, but at least you didn't miss your chance, meaning you create that connection point, that extra strand or bungee cord or rope between you and God, or between you and the Jewish people. But once you miss a chance to make that rope, yeah, you can make new ropes and new connections, but you can't go back in time and retroactively make that rope if there was no action associated with it. So Kabbalah's all are just accepting godliness for what it is, just accepting that sometimes I just don't have to understand. And listen, living uninspired and just going about action is not my jam. So don't get me wrong. The point I'm saying here is that you're better off if you're going to lean in one direction, or if you're going to go on a journey to find yourself and find a way to feel, find a way to connect, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever you call, I'm not judging anything. If it's playing golf and that makes you feel connected to God, whatever that thing is, don't lose sight of the fact that you actually have to be performing actions in the meantime in order to actually connect those wings that you're trying to create back to the action. And ultimately, the purpose of the entire creation is because God wanted there to be action in this world. Because he gave us 613 mitzvahs, 613 action items for things that we can do. Even prayer, the reason we have to say it with our mouth is because that creates an action. So it's not just a thought. Action is what this world is all about. And ultimately, if you can focus on action and you never have any kavanna, well, you'll still just have a bunch of birds. You created all these birds and they don't have wings. So maybe you can add them on later and then they'll fly. But if you just create wings all the time, you can't connect those birds. So the point of what I want to say is find your journey, figure out what makes you feel good, but connect it to some action. Don't lose sight of the fact that you actually have to do something about this stuff to create the bird, because just wings is kind of freaky to look at. And that's all I got to say about that. See you guys in the next one.